Hey everyone, and welcome back to part 15 of the Mystery of the Bevel Blocks. And today we're going to try to get right into it. Before I start, I have a couple announcements for you guys. First, Budcat7 Stonewall Research just found his channel. He's got a lot of great content on his channel, a lot of good conversation going too in the comments. Highly recommend checking out his channel. And I think there's some pretty interesting connections going on in the southwest of America. We're seeing a lot of these capital T-shaped doors and windows, and Budcat7 alerted me to a site that I did not know about. Hoven Castle, and this is in New Mexico, and this site has a capital T-shaped doorway or window, and there are a lot of sites in the southwest that have these. Mesa Verde is one, Chaco Canyon is another one, and I think they are very similar to the Amaru Muru capital T shape in Peru, and maybe some more places as well. But it's a very unique shape, very specific, and these are worlds apart. This is Peru, and that is southwest of America. And secondly, I just want to point out that Ben over at Uncharted X has put out part 2 of his Serapeum series. Looks like it's going to be a long, thorough series. Guys, I'm really happy to hear that because this site deserves a lot of attention. So try to keep up to date with his videos. Looks like each one's going to be segmented to focus different aspects of the site. So keep an eye out for those. Okay, today we're going to continue with the Crusader Castle list. I will provide the link for it in the description. And we are down here. We last left off at Bet Shean or Bayet Shean. And we're going to start here with Beth Jebelian. And this has a few different spellings and pronunciations too. So we're going to hop off the list here and go into my photo albums and we'll start going through them. Also, thanks to Ziggy Dan for helping me with some pronunciations. Carcassonne, it's actually Carcassonne. I'm really bad with the French language, guys, so I'm probably going to need a lot of help there. So we'll go here. There's also different pronunciations here. You can see Bayet Gouvrin, Bayet Govrin. A lot of different pronunciations and spellings of this site. First, you're going to see a lot of interesting things like this. These little niches in caves, but these are admittedly by these archaeologists and researchers that these caves have been worked by men. So these aren't completely natural. And for these kind of structures, guys, I would really recommend you guys go look at Wise Up's videos. He has spent a lot more time investigating these, and I think he has some better proposals than I do. I really kind of am dumbfounded when I see some of this stuff. Can't really explain some of these things. Like this one, for example, this almost looks like a pantheon, doesn't it? And this is worked by man. These layers here, these rows, these strata. Let's see if I can zoom in. These are quarried marks. These are some kind of pick marks. I think even up here as well. And then you have this smooth area. I don't know, plastering over top or water coming down, smoothing it out. So, some of this is worked by man. I don't know how much, but there are clear straight lines and pick marks in some of these subterranean elements at this site. So, going above ground in my territory, great example here. You guys probably see them right away. Bevel blocks right in the middle. And I can't really find too many other instances of the bevel blocks at this site. So I have to assume that these may have been carted off from another site and brought here to be reincorporated. Or perhaps maybe this site only had a few bevel blocks to begin with. That's also a possibility. Obviously, reincorporated older elements, column drum segment here, right? So, very conglomerate site, very ruined site. The whole upper arch area is obviously conglomerate of bricks and mortar and fill, rubble, the crude blocks. I'm not sure if any of this is original. Some of these one-piece columns are pretty impressive. They could have been stood back up, or that may be their original position. Here's a close-up. Nice lighting. You can see the obvious bevel blocks and how they don't match any of the other construction material. Other circular reused elements, try to keep an eye out for those. We're going to see a lot of those this episode. Now here's an interesting feature of this site. This is a wine press. This has some interesting things going on with it. First of all, the fact that it's carved out of rock, that it was made subterranean like this. Very interesting execution. You see the rows and the pick marks. Very impressive. And then you see a trapezoidal doorway here. It's very small. This you'd have to crouch to get through this. But very interesting execution here. I don't know what to think about it. Maybe we should talk to Wise Up about it. A close-up, just because I want to point out some things. The trim around this trapezoidal doorway, and look at some of these pick marks inside of here, how smooth they are. Over here, how smooth and uniform they are. Very impressive, whoever did this. The rows over here, you could see the lines and the pick marks. And the stone down here, I believe several of these stones have holes through them like this, so that they could have been used to crush the vegetative material, the olives or grapes, whatever they were trying to process. But just an interesting execution and very impressive. Next is Caesarea or Maritima, and I couldn't find hardly any bevel blocks at this site, but I found one photo, one amazingly large photo here, that shows them right here. This one section of bevel blocks are left. Clearly that is a bevel block, and these other ones heavily eroded and somehow magically still holding together. And the rest of them in the wall don't appear to be, but maybe looking at them from a different angle we might be able to tell that they are. Very interesting construction here. It's just falling into the sea. Perhaps that's a bevel block down there, a broken one, and perhaps some of these other ones in the water. Hard to tell. Once they go into the water and the algae gets to them and the barnacles and everything, you'll never know. But I have to say that at least there was something here at one time, maybe part of this port or harbor. If you look at this site from Google Earth, you see that there is a lot of underwater structure that appears to be artificial. Looks like more of this maybe. And I do want to point out that this Caesarea area is where this box comes from that I was talking about in the Pandora's Boxes episode. And obviously there's something going on with these boxes, with these square holes in them, whatever purpose they were for. I'm going to say in this instance they were more than likely for some kind of decorative attachment, maybe a railing or some kind of inlay, sculptural stuff. That's all I can guess. Next is Karlet, and this one I couldn't find any bevel blocks at either, guys, but I do want to show you this one very interesting photo here. First of all, the structure above does have some secondary hallmarks, some square holes, and some interesting architecture, but the blocks are not correct, so I can't include it. But there are some interesting subterranean and bedrock cut areas at this site. Looks very old and very similar to a lot of these other bedrock cut sites in Israel. And we'll have to discuss it with Wise Up to even see if some of this stuff even is bedrock cut. Now next, I want to jump off the list and go to Honen Fortress. I found a few sites that are not on the Crusader Castle list, but they are listed as Crusader era sites on other web pages. So one site I've been looking at a lot lately, I'm sure you all have seen the watermarks for this site in the images, BibleWalks.com. I'll provide that link in the description as well. But these guys have been providing a lot of the high quality photos that we've been looking at. So I want to give them a shout out because they've been helping us out a lot. Almost no one else has been able to provide me the kind of quality photos that this Bible Walks channel has provided us. So Honen Fortress, this is one of the first pictures I saw, and I said, yep, right away. Bevel blocks, clearly ones. And this, I wanted to point out some very interesting things going on. Some pitted surface blocks. And then this one here in particular, what's going on with it is it a bevel block on this side, but on this side it's finely dressed, and this little broken away portion is very interesting. And the block above it, it has a square hole at a corner, and foliage is growing out of it, of course, and perhaps more instances of that elsewhere in the wall. But not all of these blocks are bevel blocks also, and there appears to be some rubble and mortar fill in there, so this may be secondary structure. And I was showing Philip from the ancient alternative view to this site earlier, and yeah, I think we're both in agreement here that this is a reconstructed site. Look down here at the bottom. What are these? Two round elements with two round holes in them? What's going on there? Are these millstones, or are these column segments? And what are they doing down here, right? Again, we're going to see a lot of circular and cylindrical elements in these Crusader sites, and I'm not entirely sure why we see them there sometimes, like with the Sidon Castle example. Some of those do look like repurposed cylindrical column drum segments, but other ones just look like they wanted to have decorative round stones in their walls. So you can see clearly here there are elements that are bevel blocks, but they are interspersed with a lot of cruder blocks. So I think we're going to have to say that this is a reconstructed site, heavily reconstructed, and who knows how much of it really is original here. A little blurry photo here, but it shows repurposed bevel blocks because we almost never see them inside, right? And here we see some bevel blocks inside, some of them just laying around as well. And around the corner, another repurposed block. I have to say, that's a very odd place for that. It's not in the middle. It's not, in conjunction with any others. Very odd placement. Broken one down here, and all of these. And then this one over here. And a little clearer, a different lighting so you can really see them. One more angle at the front here, different perspective. You can see this is a big square bevel block here. Kind of unique to see square ones like that. I don't see any others that are square like that. Most of them are these long rectangular blocks. And then this one, this angle is very important. I believe this is the back of the structure. And like I was discussing with Philip, I don't see any bevel blocks at all in the back of this side, the back side of this structure. So more than likely, it is a reconfigured site and probably added onto. And what we're looking at here is an addition on the back of it. Perhaps other elements went down underground as well. Next, another one that's not on the list, Kola Fortress. And another set of photos from Bible Walks. Great quality. I don't think we would have been able to see these without Bible Walks. Clearly bevel blocks again, mostly at the corners. Finely dressed on this side. Heavy boss on that side. And most of these other blocks, ruinous rubble, a lot of mortar. So I'm going to have to say that not only is this a reconstructed site, but perhaps these bevel blocks have been carted off from another site and brought to this site to be incorporated for the corners specifically as cornerstones. Another angle, you can clearly see all this mortar on the right, how it's been smeared in, and these little rocks that have been shoved in. And the only part that you see that's bevel block is right here, this left upper portion, and maybe one or two in the bottom. But very odd that there's only a few in the corners. You might call that one a bevel block. I'm not sure. Could be. Maybe some of these upper stones, they do look a little darker. Maybe they're from the original construction. It might be another two-tone site. And a final angle, again, just at the corners here. So I'm not sure how much of this site is actually original, but definitely connected. Next is Tancred Fortress, and this one kind of got me confused with some other areas around Jerusalem, David's Tower, and some of the areas on the Temple Mount. So I'm pretty sure that all of these labels are correct and that this is the correct site. So right away, all of these blocks in the background, upper and lower, are bevel block. Now, I will not say that it's the original configuration because I see a lot of mortar. Mortar pretty much uniformly all the way throughout this structure. Now, one thing I think is a dead giveaway that this is reconstructed is that you see the arrow slits. The arrow slits do not have special stones for the top and the bottom to create the arrow slit. They don't have little square cutouts in them. So I have to say that the original builders did not do this. It does look like this is incorporated bedrock down here, unless we are looking at some kind of Baalbek Trilithon Stone of the Pregnant Woman sized blocks here, or maybe even like under the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem. But I'm not too sure. I think more than likely it's bedrock. But we do see that some of the bedrock has been worked. You can see smoothed off surfaces and hard edges where they've chiseled away at it and then they've added blocks into it to shore it up to make it stable for the upper structures. And here's another good angle that shows some more of the processing in the bedrock. You can see the rows again and the pick marks. And here's a good angle that shows some of the larger blocks, people for scale. Some of them go lower maybe, that need to be excavated. This is a modern walkway, much smaller blocks, much newer blocks, heavily eroded, and also I'm going to say roughly, crudely executed bevel blocks. These are not very well defined, and they're not the puffy style or the very uniform, formal style that we saw like in the tomb of Alexander the Great. So this was almost like done in a hurry, I would say. These are very slapped together blocks. These were very crudely done. And you notice we don't really see any anomalies like square holes or nubs or any weirdness going on. These are pretty normal blocks. So we could even propose that these are legacy bevel blocks, that maybe some later culture decided to emulate the bevel blocks and make their own, and that is why these don't seem as impressive in terms of their dimensions and execution as some of the other examples. And a final look here at a close-up of one of the blocks. So you look at this and you see how crudely it's executed. I'm not sure, guys. The other blocks that we've looked at throughout the series are a lot more impressive to me, and they have some of those anomalies, just square pits and square holes and square nubs and knobs and odd processing marks, where these stones seem pretty regular to me, and with the mortar in between them, this could very well be just an emulated bevel block site. But it could also be the original builders as well. I'm not going to rule that out. Next is Castellum Regis. It has this other name that I cannot pronounce. And this is a pretty obvious site. You see a lot of rubble, a lot of stacked rubble with mortar up here. But then you look up here at this corner again, and aha, bevel blocks. And other instances in this structure at corners. So very few bevel blocks in the structure, only at corners. Most of them right here. Now, I would like to point out some anomalous stones. For example, this guy here with these holes in them, these indentations. What is he doing there with these lines in it? That's obviously not where he was originally supposed to go. And there are other weird little holes in some of the bevel blocks as well. See, these are the kind of anomalies that make me scratch my head when I look at the bevel blocks. The last example, the blocks were pretty plain. And even here on the corner, look how how formal these are. These are very straight, and the bosses are very geometric. These not only are they bevel blocks, but they are also well done bevel blocks. So the last example just does not impress me as much as even this example, where there's only a few of them. And maybe some of these other stones are rubble and ruinous material from the original site. I see lots of little holes in them. I'd love to see quality photos and see if any of that stuff is square as well. A lot of reused material. And even some of these blocks down in the lower areas, I see some of them missing their corners, especially like these over here, missing some of their corners. So maybe these blocks were originally fitted together in a much tighter arrangement, and we're looking at a secondary retaining wall here. Goes on for a while. Here's another angle. Again, very clear. There's only a few bevel blocks in this square structure. Again, though, I will point out no upper and lower piece for this arrow slit. They're just plain blocks. So that's not how the original builders would have done it. They would have made a special top and bottom piece. And this bevel block here has a square indentation in it. An odd place for that. Most of the blocks, again, are on the corners. And I would like to point out here over on the right, a modern attempt just looks similar, but clearly we can tell the difference between what a modern bevel block or attempt, a legacy, looks like and what the originals look like. It's night and day difference, guys. I don't see how anybody could even propose that they're not ancient. And a final look, this is another great portion. There are some black and white photos of this area on Google, but they're not large, so I didn't include them, but they're nice because they show a good contrast. You can see the bosses and margins very well. But here are a couple. This one over here, strange holes in them again. So these are the anomalies that I look for. This block here is strange. Extra angles, polygonal. Maybe that is an original block. Maybe this is an original wall, or rebuilt. Okay, second to last is Aderet Fortress, and we discussed this in an earlier episode. I think this one's pretty clear, guys. The lower portion, bevel block. The upper portion, this is the Crusader era addition. I'm not even sure if the original construction was a fort. There's so little of it here at the bottom. Who knows? Maybe most of the top structure was carted off for the other sites. Likely possibility, I think. And lastly, guys, we'll close out today with the Citadel of Aleppo. Now here's another one that was not on the list, but it obviously has to do with Crusades and other eras of conquest and destruction. And there's a lot going on at this site, and there's a lot of photos to look at on Google. I tried to pick out a lot of good ones, the ones that show off the bevel blocks and some of the more impressive architecture. Shout out to Sacred Geometry Decoded on a couple of these. I'd love his input on some of them, but we'll go through them pretty quickly here, try to show you all the best evidence for the bevel blocks at the Citadel. Okay, first, probably the least quality photo of all of them that I have, but it's a nice view. It shows this tower in the foreground here, this tower in the front of the actual Citadel. This is where we're going to see a lot of the bevel blocks, and it's mostly in the lower courses. Now, there are other interesting architectural elements and connected hallmarks at the Citadel, and we could spend a long time going through these. For example, these here remind me of the Olympos, Turkey arches and some Ethiopian arches, but we don't have to get into all those other tangents. We'll try to stay focused on the bevel block hallmarks, but I will point out also we see more round stone elements here, and we can zoom in on this one. It's not that great quality of a photo, but round elements again peppered throughout this in a pretty geometric pattern or a decorative pattern. So I have to assume that these were purposeful and deliberate and the original construction perhaps. Also note the windows, the square windows and where they are, and some of the foliage as well. Now this one's a little bit better quality. You can at least start to see some of the bevel blocks here down in the bottom right. See, they start popping out, and you can tell that they're a little bit different than the rest of the blocks, and some of them extend higher up into the structure, but as the structure goes higher, it tends to be more finely dressed, and that's how we see other sites as well. Here's a great photo, very large and detailed. Obviously bevel blocks down here, right? And note these have, they're very strange, aren't they? They have like nubs, protrusions on either end, and the middle is kind of smooth. That's a very interesting execution. Like this one down here, this large one, it has, it's not a full, and this one below it, it's not a full bevel block. Very interesting there. And the one next to it is very nice. It's very uniform, formal execution. And then this one up here is very interesting, and we're going to see a better photo of that later. But it's got a square indentation and maybe a secondary square indentation in it. Very interesting processing mark in that stone. And then you look over here to the left, some more smaller bevel blocks in this lower area here on the left. Here's a really good photo. This is that same area we were just looking at. I'm going to zoom in. Now look at that square indentation there on that corner piece. That is very, very odd to me. Very odd. Now, again, you see the bevel blocks down here have these weird they're not even really bevel blocks. They're just knobbed blocks, double-lobed blocks. Hard to describe those. Very interesting. And then you look up closer at this upper structure. When you have a high-quality photo and you can zoom in, these are, in fact, bevel blocks. This whole upper structure is bevel block, but it's the alternative style, the smooth edge, and maybe this is a pitted, recessed interior, or the bosses are very shallow. And that again reminds me of the proposed Alexander the Great tomb that we saw in the earlier episode. So the other photos are pretty much the same, just alternative angles. I would like to show you all some of these. This is one of those. I mean, now look at this closely. This is not a round or cylindrical stone plonked into a wall. This is a square stone that has been carved to be circular and then has this very ornate pattern carved into it. So that is definitely an intended decorative style. Zooming out from where we were, this is a very impressive structure. A lot of interesting architecture going on here. First of all, there is instances of polygonal stonework and multi-faceted stones here around the gates. The alternating colors of stone are very impressive, and some of these inlays here, these are very impressive. And in the larger gates, they're even more impressive. Now, some of these, you could propose that some of these might be faint bevel blocks, but I think for the most part, we're going to have to say that it's a finely dressed wall. We could propose that it's the original builders, though, here. This is all very tightly done. This lower block looks interesting. This might be a bevel block. That's an interesting line there and a different surface treatment. And I would like to point out some of these other interesting blocks, like this one. It's like almost like a snowflake pattern here. Very interesting. Starburst pattern. And then there was one more over here with a similar pattern to the one on the left. Very interesting. Similar execution. Again, a square block that has had a round boss made in relief and then carved. Now, I want to point out here on the lintel something very unique. Now, we have the incised motif, and it does not continue. It stops at the darker lintel. So I don't know what to think about that. Was that the intended execution there? Is this a little gap in between? I don't know what to think about that. That's kind of odd if that was intended. And again, these upper elements are very impressive. These inlays, very, very impressive. This is a very faint carving here. And there's another one matching on the other side. Very hard to see that. But very nice stonework here. Very, very good carving. And we'll close it up there today, guys. There's a lot more pictures on Google if you want to keep searching at the Citadel of Aleppo. I was really impressed by it. I knew about the site, but I did not look at it in this vein of research, and I was astounded when I found the connection. But we have a lot more sites on that list to go through, and I'm sure I'm going to find a lot more sites that are not on the list, and some other sites that I still have yet to go through that are not involved with the Crusaders. So this series looks like it's going to be going on for a long time. I also would like to point out that I'm going to get back to the Pandora's Boxes episode soon. The next area of investigation is a lot bigger than the last, so it's going to take a lot more time to go through and try to find as many of the examples and keep all the attribution straight. So I was watching Brian Forrester's recent live stream where he was talking about being in Acapulco for an event, and I didn't know anything about that, but I was reminded of the Crow House channel, Max Egan, talking about being in Acapulco for this Anarchapulco event, and started scrolling down. Look at all these people. You got Ron Paul, David Icke, you've got Brian Forrester, and you got Max Egan. So, and a few other people that I do not know about. A lot of people discussing a lot of different backgrounds, but pretty cool that a couple of the guys that I subscribe to are going to be at the event together. Max, great videos of Max over at the Crow House channel, and hopefully all of you guys know Brian Forrester and are subscribed to his channel. But pretty interesting coincidence there. I didn't know much about this event. I don't know why Ron Paul, David Icke, I don't know, but keep your feelers open for this one. Maybe there's some interesting stuff going on here. So that's it for today, guys. We will continue with the list next time. We still have a long way to go, and I have a few sites that are not associated with the Crusades that I still need to talk about. So the series goes on. Thank you guys for hanging out with me, and we will talk to you next time.